Happy to have you along. We are joined, as always, by Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, a James Beard Award nominee, the group including Where We Are, Church Key, Downstairs Birch and Barley. Greg, it is great to see you.
You too.
What is on tap this week?
So for this week, we have a brand new beer from Maine Beer Company out of Freeport, Maine. It's called Weez. And this is one of two beers they've just recently brewed and released. In fact, this is a beer that was bottled just about a week ago. So hyper fresh, as is the case with all of Maine Beer Company's beers. And it's a companion beer, actually. They brewed two new beers, both rather likely. They're both based on the kind of the IPA style of hopped up American ales. One is called Weez, which is obviously a darker IPA, a black IPA of sorts. The other one's called Another One, which is roughly the same recipe, just with a paler hue to it. So these two just came out in tandem, so you look around, see if you find both Weez and Another One. They're very amazing beers. And I mentioned Freeport, Maine. Maine Beer Company, after starting as a very small brewery, we've done their beers before, right. Talked about Peeper and Lunch and Mean Old Tom and things like that. Very small, about 2,500 barrels capacity. Well, they moved to a new location, a new brew house in Freeport, near Portland, and this is going to allow them to do roughly 5,000 barrels of beer this year, so they could double their capacity. Wow. Now, that's still super small on the scale of things, so we're lucky to see any beer that we do see down here. And what's cool about it, too, is Maine makes small batches of beer, and they make it, and they ship it immediately. That's why when you go out and you look at your bottles and you look at the kegs, you know that it's always fresh. It also means it's going to come and go. So even if you don't see Weez for very long, know that they'll brew it again, and you will see it then. And better to see it in fits and starts to maintain freshness rather than just a lot of it everywhere that may, go south on the shelves.
They seem like nice guys up there, too.
Oh,
and one of the last beers we did, I try to let every brewery know. I mean, how is a brewery necessarily in Oregon going to know that they're on Beer of the Week? So I send them an email with a link to the video, and they wrote me a nice note back. So
they're great. Dan and Dave Kleben are the owners, the proprietors. And actually, before we taste this beer, I should mention that our 19th Blue Jacket collaboration beer was just brewed about, I guess, three weeks ago or so with Maine Beer Company. It's actually called Collaboration Time number 2 because it's the second collaboration that Maine Beer has ever done. And Collaboration Time number 19 didn't sound as good. So Collaboration Time number 2, and we're in great company, obviously, with Maine Beer Company, but their first collaboration was done with Sean Lawson of Lawson's Finest Liquids up in Vermont, one of those cult breweries that if you're up in Vermont, you got to make sure you go there. You're going to try to hit all three. You hit Lawson's, Hill Farmstead, and The Alchemist to grab your heady topper. So we're the second ones to do it. That beer actually should be on its way, and you'll see it at Church Key probably the next couple of weeks. The collaboration Blue Jacket Maine Beer Company beer, Collaboration Time 2, and it's a hopped up saison. So, anyways, Weez is a black IPA.
Ooh. Hello. So fresh smelling.
Yeah, I mean, this is the epitome of fresh hop character. And what's great about this, too, is obviously you see the beer, you can expect some roasty character. And it has a touch of an earthy kind of peppery bite to it, but it's not really astringent. It's not really roasty dry. It's actually got a creamy kind of quality to it and a smooth drying finish. Sometimes black IPAs, when you compound the hop bitterness and the roasted malt bitterness, you can get something that's almost gravelly and almost over dry. This has a balancing note to it. I mean, it's great in the nose, as you said. It pops with a lot of hops. They're brewing this with Warrior hops, which are very pungent, dank, and earthy. Cascade, floral, lemon, Citra, which is, obviously citric, but also has this kind of earthy green quality underneath it. And then big time aromas coming from Simcoe hops, which are the quintessential pine resin quality. And that's why it hits you with that pine and cocoa in the nose. Then you get that kind of resinous, dank hop character. But it finishes with a really nice balance of kind of cocoa and hop as well.
Now, this is Weez, and you mentioned its brother or sister beer is Another One.
Another One, yeah.
Now, we're not tasting that one today. If people see this in the store and they see Another One, What sort of differences might they be looking
So
for?
really, from what I understand, it's almost the exact same beer. Weez comes in at 7.2% alcohol, another one at 7%, so very close there. Same hop bill, same hops employed, same hop regimen, except another one is using much paler malts. So you put them side by side. This is blackish brown. Another one, which I have already tasted, believe it or not, is golden in color. And so the flavor differential is actually pretty big because the hops, all flavors in beer are present in the way that they interact with other flavors. So Simcoe as a hop is going to smell much different coming through this dark malt character than it will coming through a paler malt character. And I can tell you that another one is much more emphatically hoppy bitter on the palate, largely because it doesn't have the roasted malt character to kind of interfere with that hop bitterness. It's much more straight ahead, West Coast, packing a hop bitter punch. This has more of a creamy smoothness to it. So that's the kind of the primary difference you'd find between the two of those.
Does that make it easier to pair things with this?
I think with this one it does. This is a much more, a much better food beer to me than another one because, yeah, to your point, another one is going to be really bitter, really intense, very pungent. Weez seems to be a little bit more balanced. And I also like the way that mild kind of roasty character is going to let us play with some food options as well. So, some of the things I'm thinking about with this, you've got, remember, bitterness is great with salty character, and roast is a kind of peppery dryness that balances against salt as well. So I'm thinking of creamy pastas with a salty note. So you can get truffled risotto, Alfredo sauces, carbonara with that pancetta salt to it as well. And then even something like French onion soup that has a certain earthy quality to it, a tang, a creamy richness, especially with that cheese top to it. And then I'm really finding that black IPAs to me are amazing with specifically, well, they're great with lamb because lamb is rich and kind of funky and earthy, but also with merguez sausage, which is typically lamb-based. It has a little bit of a spice note, which is great with that roasted hop character. One last thing about the smoothness of this beer is I think they're using something called Midnight Wheat as part of the malt bill here. And Midnight Wheat is a kind of a smoother dark wheat malt it's going to give you a little bit of roast, but more of like cocoa latte rather than espresso. And it gives it a clean, crisp quality as well. So Midnight Wheat's showing up in a lot of beers to kind of mellow out the intensity of the roast character, but still giving you all that great color.
It's really a dramatic transition from the front of this beer to me to the finish, and I couldn't really put my finger on what I was getting in the finish. It's good. I mean, there's no problem with it, but...
Oh, yeah. And I think that's just kind of like these phases. Up front, it's the hop and cocoa. And then I get big, dank hop character first. That's that resin and pine, almost like the Simcoe attack at the beginning of the sip. And then it just kind of smooths out to this beautiful interplay between the chocolate, the cream, and the earth of the hop character.
Before we go, you mentioned that Maine Beer Company is expanding, going from 2,500 barrels to 5,000 barrels, and as you said, not a giant expansion. And moving to a new facility. Has there been an experience you've had that where a brewery has expanded and / moved locations, and then you've tasted their beer again, and something's changed or different?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know of any breweries that I've experienced that with, and one of the reasons for that is because of the due diligence that these brewers practice when they do these expansions. Maine Beer Company, great craft brewers in general, take this beer very seriously. And frankly, just like at Blue Jacket, we're getting ready to start testing our system. If we make a beer and it's not perfect, you dump it. And I think Maine Beer Company they're smart brewers. They're very good at what they do. I think I heard that it took them only 2 or 3 shots in their new facility to get lunch, their inimitable IPA, to taste the way that they thought it should taste. But to that point, know that brewers, when they're expanding, changing brew houses, moving the production, they are going to labor and at great cost to make sure that they get the beer to where it's supposed to be before they release it, and that you can't just scale up a recipe from a a 15-barrel system to a 60-barrel system. It's not just like you just multiply times 4.
Right. Add more
unfortunately.
water. Add more
but so they take their time, and we haven't seen any lulls in production.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that was happening here at all, or that it would happen, but
I think it's a great point.
Curious,
yeah, it's a great point to know that, there is a lot more than just the expenses of production, of switching production facilities or expanding production are much more than just simply the investment in the equipment or the time or the labor. It's an investment in really retooling your beers to taste the same way on a brand new system, which can be difficult. And the last thing I want to say about Maine Beer Company is, and something we've talked about before, we talk about like Stone and Joy by IPA and things like that, is that brewers are becoming more and more confident in the freshness of their beer, and confident that the consumer understands that. For certain styles, beers need to be drank as fresh as possible, that distributors understand it, retailers understand it, and they're going out on a huge limb to label date their bottle. So on every single Maine Beer Company bottle, you will see they literally punch in the date. Some breweries like Dogfish Head and Victory, you'll see it's etched on the collar here, but they punch in the date, and it's pretty easy to understand too. Sometimes it seems like you got to kind of figure out the code. This is simple: 061113, meaning it was bottled on the 11th of June 2013, and exactly. So
yeah, you were right.
Fresh.
Ago, he said.
And they should be drank as fresh as possible. Maine suggests within 90 days. That gives you a good wide open window, so about 3 months. But of course, the earlier the better. Don't sit on it for 3 months if you don't have to. And I think this is what's changing the game. It used to be, if you're going to carry a brewery's beers, you expect to have it all the time because your guests do. But now it's simply not. It's not a good thing to load up on something just to always have it. And I love with Maine, they're literally just shooting down small amounts of beer when they have it and when it's fresh. And it's great. It comes in, it goes out, it gets sold. So you might have to go a few weeks without finding your favorite Maine Beer Company beer, but know that when you do find it again, it's going to taste the way it should, and that's as fresh as possible.
I highly appreciate the breweries that put that date on there,
especially for IPAs.
Yeah.
It's to the point now where, honestly, if I'm going to a store and I can't find a date on it, I'm going to go to another one.
Yep, absolutely.
It's just the way it is.
Yep. If you've got a question for Greg, well, you can pass it along to us, and I will ask him. The email is beeroftheweek@WTOP.com. Greg, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Everyone, please always do drink responsibly, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.